everyone to another Wellness Wednesday chat. I'm Paige Reynolds and I'll be your host for tonight. With me, as always, is Carla Coleman, Director of Communications here at New Salem Baptist Church. Today we are welcoming back Mr. Ed Hill, Mr. Elon Sims, and Mr. Julian Turner. They joined us a couple weeks back to speak about being a Black man in these troubling times. It was a great conversation, and many requested a part two, so that's what we'll be digging into tonight. So I'm going to give this off to Mr. Ed. Could you, for those who weren't able to join us last week, could you tell them a little bit about what you do and who you are?
Sure. Thanks, Paige. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Hill. I am a deacon at New Salem. I'm also a participated with the music ministry there for many, many years. I am also into technology. I work for a firm called the Management Council, and I do data analysis and all kinds of work specific to development and training and other areas. So that's just a little bit about me, and I'm glad to be here again tonight. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you back. Mr. Sims?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back. My name is Elon Sims, and I've been a member at New Salem since about 2007, and I've been involved in a number of different ministries, from young adult choir to young adult ministry and teaching in Promised Land. By training in my workforce, I am a social worker, but I currently work for an organization called Crane Group, and I serve as our Vice President of Community Impact, and I oversee our charitable contributions, community relations, community outreach efforts, our volunteerism for our staff, and our engagement with our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives as well. And so again, it's great to be back with Deacon Hill and Julian tonight.
For sure. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Turner?
Hey guys, good evening. Julian Turner. I'm sure many of you all that are watching recognize me as Dr. Cynthia Turner's oldest son, but I am a recent graduate of Morehouse College and currently a graduate student at USC School of Cinematic Arts, and I am a filmmaker and artist by trade.
Great. Thank you guys again so much for being here. So to kick off tonight, our first question is, has these troubling times, the pandemic, vaccines, economic woes, police brutality and killings, wars, and just a divided America, have they challenged or strengthened your faith in God? Anyone jump in?
I'll go
I
first.
can jump in.
Well, go ahead. I want to let Elon jump in.
I was waiting for, Julian, to go first,
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I think definitely strengthened my relationship in my faith. I think there's definitely was a point where that's really all I had personally, especially when everything started. I think when COVID and the pandemic first hit, it kind of simplified life for us and made us, really realize, what really mattered, and not being able to see your family and especially when sports, shut down. That was like, everything felt, very temporary, and so I think, at the end of the day, I found myself on my knees praying a lot, just conversating with God throughout the day. Something that I never really something that I found an excuse to avoid and an excuse to not do throughout the day. I found myself doing that a lot more often, and with everything that's been happening over the last year, it seems like there was nothing that we could predict. There's a lot of things that we couldn't control, and it got to a point where as stuff happened, it was no longer surprising. And so the only thing consistent relationships with our family and relationships with God. So I think I definitely strengthened my relationship throughout this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I would say that very much the same thing, the same experience in the sense of really getting closer to God. And for me, it's interesting because certainly serving in the role of deacon, a lot of people look to you to have strong faith, and that certainly rang true during this time. But I think that even those of us that walk this, we have ups and downs, and it's challenging and difficult at times. And I'm just thankful that we have a rock to lean on. We have the Lord to hold on to. And many times my wife and we talked about this. I don't know how people make it and have made it through this time without the Lord. But it definitely served as an opportunity to get closer. As Julian said, a lot of things shut down, so it gave us an opportunity to simplify life and to really just um, focus in on those things that are important, and really examine my relationship with God, and to do those things to improve that, but to also do those things to check myself to make sure I'm walking what I'm talking and believing. So I had a great opportunity to do that during this period.
I would say for me, the only thing that I'll add, I think they kind of brought up these points already, was just around just the roller coaster of things that we've been dealing with. I think Julian mentioned just like things you can't really predict, throughout this time and pandemic, right? You think about all the things that have occurred, and I would say with me being a person of like likes to have routine in my life, right? So like not being able to kind of connect with the folks I would usually connect with like at church, that kind of hold me accountable to my walk. I think I honestly, quite honestly, struggle with that, during this time. And so I would say for me, it's my faith kind of was challenged, in some ways. And I think, on a later side of this pandemic, I've had to do a lot more, to make sure I've been connected and reading more, praying more, and bringing more things to God, like trying not to take things in my own hands, right, and like giving it over to Him. I've had to quite learn even more so like during this time, because you can't predict things, and so I think that's helped me to approach life a bit differently, a bit more flexibly, because when those routines were interrupted, I think it shifted a lot of things for me. But I'm so glad that I have that faith as a foundation for myself, because like Deacon Hill just mentioned, wouldn't make it without it.
Yeah, that's a great point you all made about it when everything is shutting down and it seemed like you couldn't control anything. The one thing you can control is that in your relationship. So that's great that you all um, grew a stronger connection. So before we get to the next one, Carla, do you have any questions or comments? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
comes back to staying connected, and I just want to ask, I think you each brought out ways in which you stay. Well, what are some of the other ways that you stay connected during the pandemic, in particularly, especially within your church family?
I would say for me, there was one moment where I was so glad to kind of be kind of back on like church grounds. I came and volunteered with an organization called BESA that works with the food pantry, and it was just for me like I hadn't been, I think, at the church for like a whole year, and so it was just nice to be
Mhm.
able to kind of have that time to get reconnected. And I think also too, we've maintained regular contact like with our care group, and so we check in on one
Mhm.
another, text often, and that's been helpful as well to kind of make sure that we've stayed connected to the folks we were usually connected with while we were, what may have been at church or in person. So those two things I think have
Right.
been helpful, is one, to serve at the church, but then two, stay connected to our care group.
Nice. Nice. Ed, were
Yeah,
you
I
going
would
to
say the
chime
same.
in?
Yeah, I would just say the same thing. I mean, certainly staying plugged into the care group. It's been amazing. My men's care group has been a lifesaver on many occasions. Also, our Sunday school club has been
Mhm.
amazing. We've been meeting virtually since this whole thing has started, so that's been incredible. We've really grown closer as a class, as a group. And we've had new people come in. I mean, it's really been beautiful to see that grow. And then also just staying plugged in with other fellows, other people, other families from the church. Just phone calls, text messages. We've been real
Mhm.
blessed to have a community of people who have
Mhm.
checked on each other and been there for each other.
Nice, very nice. Mhm.
I think for me, on top of what the others have said, I think there was a portion of the, I guess, quarantine where I felt like I needed to do some service, and I found myself really, throwing and hosting events and just going out in the community and doing different service projects to also, help those that don't necessarily have the resources that I was blessed to have, and I think that often, beyond being able to just hang out with friends or trying to stay in contact with people, I think coming together and giving back to the community was also another way that, I strengthened my relationship with all my family and friends, and then also, my faith through work.
That's the interesting part about it is that even though you were apart, in some ways it brought you closer to people.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
think it made a lot of everyone more creative and thoughtful in their intentions to figure out ways to stay connected.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, a segue
Okay.
from that, our next question. In your thoughts, does protesting seem to produce a positive outcome?
Um,
I'll jump in first. Go ahead, Julian. Go ahead.
uh, yeah, I think pro, um, protesting is definitely, it can have negative and positive effects, but I think mostly it's an outlet. Um, you know, when it's a reaction. Um, and often a a reaction that is needed and necessary. A line brother of mine, in my chapter of Phi Alpha, we actually hosted a protest this past summer. But it was more of a protest, so that people can be heard and providing a platform for people to speak,
Mhm.
and to perform and express themselves through different mediums. So I think protest, that's a very general question, but I think protest can be, observed in many different forms, and they're mostly have positive impacts because they're just outlets, and we'd rather people have an outlet through protest than through violence.
Mhm.
I think the only thing that I'll add there is I think Julian's point earlier that it can have both negative and positive effects. And I think when you think of this term like protest, depending on who you ask and what side you're on, you may have a different response to it all. But I think for
Mhm.
me, as I think about coming from a more of a personal perspective on all of this as well, like you know this has, of course, some positive effects for people, for me, people who look like me, right? I think that if it weren't for protests, could I, live in the neighborhood I live in? Could I go on to the school that I've gone to, right? Could I travel to the places I can travel to? Can I eat at the restaurants I want to eat at, right? Can I
Mhm.
drink from the same water fountains as other people, right? If I'm thirsty, can I go to
Mhm.
pools, And so I think for me, like those protests that have happened over decades have, brought us, like we said, a mighty long way.
Mhm.
And I think that it has had some positive effects. But I think also too, there are some protests that can counteract, those systemic changes that we all seek, for our community. And those ones aren't, we can even share that aren't good for systemic changes as a whole. And so, but I think by and large, for people who are really working to try to do good for all of us, no matter what you look like, what color you are, your background,
Mhm.
that protest can have truly positive effects for each of us and every one of us.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think both of them have spoken very well as it relates to that. The only thing that I would add is I think that everybody has to search themselves and find out what it is that they're being moved to do. I
Mhm.
think the worst thing is to do nothing in situations. I'm not telling people what to do, but I think the worst thing is to do nothing and to expect that that change is going to happen when you do nothing. I think you have to do something. And protest, as Julian said, is one of those outlets, is one of those ways to try to do something to make change happen. I found it really interesting and powerful, the protests that happened, not just, in our city, not just in cities around the United States, but in cities and countries around the world
Mhm.
in response to the murder of George Floyd. And so when I
Mhm.
look at that, that that energy and that movement, it just it for me, I don't see how that could not be positive, right? It's all about bringing light to situations that people really want to keep in the dark, or to keep the status quo. So I think things
Mhm.
are um, uh, moving. I think things can move when people make a decision to get involved and to be a part of change.
Mhm. Yeah, with the
Yeah.
peaceful protests over the past year, and I mean, the discussions about, police brutality and killings and all the things that are happening in our country just wouldn't have been elevated to any point if we didn't actually get to the streets. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, how do you bring light to something that needs to be fixed, that needs where we need a change? Yeah.
And if I could, I would just add this. I mean, there are things, obviously, people are saying, well, this has gone on, for so long. We're able to see it now more because of technology and because of the times, right? We got social media,
Mhm.
and so news travels faster, and so on and so forth. What I like to call it, and I'm going to connect this to the pandemic quickly, and that is that a lot of people looked at the pandemic as an opportunity to cover, to hide, right? We wear a
Mhm.
mask and cover up, right? But I saw the pandemic as really unveiling some sicknesses that have existed in this country for hundreds of
Mhm.
years, right? Um,
Mhm.
and and I think when you talk about protesting and some of the things that people have done to shine light on these things, it's really twofold. One, it's we're tired of that. We don't want to deal with this anymore. Something needs to happen. But two, it's also to say you can't hide anymore. Right. It's,
Mhm.
I was in a meeting just today, and there were conversations that at the state level, in our state government, to remove the word equity from what we do in education. Right. It's happening right now. Right. So there are these things that happen, again, behind closed doors that I
Mhm.
think that the times are allowing us to unveil and to shine a light on and give us opportunity to do something about.
Absolutely. And even, equity in as far as healthcare. I mean, the pandemic, if it didn't do anything else, really showed the disparities in healthcare and in how we in access to healthcare. And so you're absolutely right. Instead of covering ourselves, we literally really showed our underwear as to why we have so many issues and problems. And we thought that, people thought set back who have the resources thinking that everything's fine, but there are millions of people who, and most of them in our community, who don't have access to healthcare, and the pandemic definitely showed that, and many of them lost their lives because of it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you mentioned that protesting is just one way to shed light. It's a big way to make change and make your voices heard. But in y'all's opinion, or what you guys think, what are some other ways that people can get involved to try to help change things rather than just the protest?
Well, and again, I just wanted to say this really quickly, and I really want to hear from Elon and from Julian, because I look at things from the standpoint of generations. I heard, oh gosh, who was this? Samuel L. Jackson said, he got, blasted for not being out on the front lines early on during the protesting. And one of the things he said, which was really kind of powerful, was that I did that, right? I did that already. And several other, prominent, folks in our community said that. And what they were speaking to was it's not that I'm not going to do anything else. It's not that at all. It's that it's about being able to pass this on to other people so that we
Mhm.
are all involved. Everybody has a role to play. And young
Mhm.
they call it young legs, right? So when you look at what was going on in the 60s during the civil rights movement, those were that was young people's movement, right?
Mhm.
MLK, they were young. These folks were young when they were out there doing this, right? They weren't 60, 70, 80.
Yeah.
Now there were some folks out there that was like that, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying the majority. The point I'm trying to make is that things go in phases and we have to be able to, be able to connect that. So to answer your question directly, Paige, I think it's really a matter of us finding out where we are in our station and in life and what we have access to, right? So I might not have the legs to protest, but I have connections, for instance, in the job that I have in state government and different relationships that I have that can be brought to bear. I identify allies that can come alongside. There are financial opportunities there, whether it be contributing to causes or making connections so that money can find the cause. And I think those are things that we have to be a little bit more wise about. We have to be a little bit more strategic about. We have to
Mhm.
be, a little bit more calculating, because trust me, those that are fighting against that, they are being all those things I just said. They're being very calculating, very strategic,
Mhm.
you know, very
Mhm.
planful as far as how they're going about the battle. So I just offer that as some other ways to get involved. And one of the biggest ways is to vote and
Amen.
to understand the necessity of that at the local level. We get excited every 4 years, but there's some stuff going on in between there that we need to really pay attention to. So I'll stop talking and let these young brothers speak up.
I think you covered quite a bit, because as you were talking, I was thinking about kind of where I am in life, because you mentioned that, like, that station and like that, access that, even, I have had and gained over the years. And while I might not always be able to get a chance to get to protest with having like my young kids at home and trying to, working to tend to them at home, I work to do my part every day, in my job, right? I keep up what's going on in our community. And because I sit in a space of helping to support various initiatives in our community that can support, black and brown people. I do that.
Mhm.
So I try to make those connections to do my part in order to, one, share those stories, what I know, what is happening in communities, and really try to find ways to make those connections back to either, my company as a funder or other potential funders who are looking to support various causes in community. And so for me, I like to come from it from like that lens and do my part in like that way. It's funny because I was like dreamed and I kind of envisioned like having a role where I could like do that every day, right? I found myself when I was working in other places, um, not having the it's like time or sometimes even energy to like do stuff like that after work. And now I get a chance to kind of be a part of some of those things day in and day out, and be able to think strategically about how we can address various issues and solutions in our community. And so for me, that's been my way and avenue to be able to give back, in addition to some of the things that you've already mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think um, like what was said, I think there are eras of activism and groups of people that kind of take the helm of the I guess the groundwork of activism. And I think this with my generation and my younger brother and their generation, I think social media is huge, and we're now becoming the latest generation to be able to vote. The voting is huge, and I think education and getting people out there, especially with you know all the tactics that are being used to suppress voting, it does take a little bit of sweat to be able to wait in line for 6 hours, and to be able to carry some bags or to be able to provide chairs for people. I think so. There is a physical element that maybe the older generations might not be able to take the helm of, and so I think education wise, educating people on what they vote on when voting happens, registering people to vote, are all just as important as protesting. And more personally, I believe, I kind of touched on it last time we spoke. Just telling stories and representation in media and things like that. That's just one personal way that I choose to
Mhm.
use my voice, and often when I feel compelled to to protest in my own personal way. My brother and I usually tell stories, or we go out and tell films that evoke empathy and motivate people to go and do that groundwork that we all speak on.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the most important thing is, you know, in the 60s and even now, there are a lot of different ways you can advance the movement, and you don't necessarily have to be the one downtown walking the walk, but there are a lot of other ways, innovative ways to tell the story, to make sure that, you're doing what you can, write a check, do what you need to do. Mhm. Great.
Yeah, definitely. Carla, are there any questions from the viewers?
Not as of yet. Someone was saying one thing, and that the education piece is what's really important. That's what's vital, and I totally agree. I think it was our pastor was saying the other day how inspired he was to see the graduating class of Morehouse this past weekend or so, and just to see both the Morehouse and Spelman and all the other HBCUs and all the black and even predominantly white universities, just seeing us walk across that stage. Paige, you're one of them, and it's just exciting to see that. It's inspiring because that's what we need. We need that education. People need to get this done. Julian, didn't you just walk across that stage?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah, I got back the day before last, so I was in Atlanta at Morehouse.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's what we need to be encouraging, because that in itself is advancing the movement in itself. Seriously, that move really is. So that was one of the comments in the chat. So that's all. I didn't see any questions
Yeah.
though.
But yeah, that's a great point. The education piece with specifically the younger generation and how we really are like changing the scope of things. So as we get into that, I want to ask, what steps would you take to create hope and positivity and positive energy among our young men in high school or college age?
That's a
I would
good
say that.
question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
There's a little delay there. I would say just important just to just maybe in simplest forms, like being present. I think it's just so
Mhm.
important for young men who look like us to see us, and
Yeah.
see that opportunities beyond what they may be seeing in their own communities. And so for me, I've worked to do my part, to serve as mentors, in high schools and over a number of years, just to be in the space, right? To help to build those relationships and to help to see something different, right? I know that I needed that growing up, and I was able to get that in a number of ways that I think have helped me in the long run, so much, that when I look back, right, to my youthhood. And so for me, I think a lot about just being present in young men's lives, providing that outlet when they need it, sharing some positive activities with them,
Yeah.
thoughts, just wisdom. I'm still afforded that, right? I can remember plenty of times I can call on Deacon Hill and have some conversation, meet for lunch, and just him pour into me. And that's been great. And I think it's important to offer that, to young men in our community.
For sure.
Well, I'll go. I also think that, and I echo everything Elon said. I think that it's also a matter of looking for places to plug in. It's so easy to hide, right? It's so easy to just like live your life and
Mm.
hope that everybody else is okay, and I'm good, you're good, we're all good, but that's not necessarily the case. So I think looking for opportunities where you can plug in, like, as Elon said, where you can be visible, establish relationships. But I think it's also important to make sure that you're somebody that people can look up to, not just look to, but look up
Mhm.
to. And that's it's difficult, it's challenging, but you have to remember that somebody's always watching you, even when you think they're not. Somebody's watching. And so I think it's important to be able to have integrity, that you're not saying one thing and doing something else. It matters. So I would just offer that as well.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Hmm.
Yeah. And I think from maybe the younger perspective, I think there's another, on the other side of the coin. I think it's a willingness and having the eagerness and motivation to reach out. I think there were times where I was very stuck in high school and in college, and reaching out. The only thing between me being stuck and having some direction was me just reaching out to somebody who's done it before. So I
Hmm.
think that's I think taking that leap, and recognizing that there are people out there that actively want to help you, actually tell their story, even if it's not an answer, but just talking to someone who's done it before, talking to somebody who's gone through the same struggles before, really was really encouraging at times, and gave me some direction on how to navigate the next few years. So I think while as you grow older, you want to be that figure that people can look up to and reach out to. While you're in the early stages, having the bravery to reach out to these people, and meet them in the middle, I think is very important to have positive energy, as a high schooler and college student, and find some direction.
Yeah, that works on
And
both
Carla,
ends.
I would just add one more thing, because he sparked something when he was saying this. I think also showing up, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I try to do is, if I know somebody is having something, a showcase or showing or a sports event or something like that, just showing up. I've had so many
Yeah.
young people tell me, like, "Oh, I didn't know you were going to show." It
Mhm.
matters. It's those things. We think it's like the big graduation gift, or you send.
Mhm.
It's the little things. Just showing up matters. So I think
Mhm.
for me, looking for ways to, again, plug in and let people know that you're thinking about them, that you care about them, and one of the ways you can do that is just by showing up.
Yeah. My dad used to say that all the time. It's the little moments that you take or you spend with someone is what they remember for the rest of their life. It's that moment where you share something. It's not that big trip or big activity. It's the small thing of just going to the grocery store, or going to like you said, an athletic event together, or showing up to someone else's. It's those things that people remember forever. They really do. Yeah. There are a couple questions in the chat. You want to address some of these now, Paige?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, great. So one is, let's see. Nope, there's a lot of questions in the chat here. Hold on one second. We'll start with the top one. Do you think we have lost or are losing some of the gains that we as a people have made during the 60s? We seem to be fighting the same battles. I know that kind of goes back to some of the conversation we had during part one, but you guys want to take that on real quick? I know that's going to be a very long conversation.
Well, I'll try. Since I'm the oldest of all these folks, like I said last time, I feel some kind of way because I thought I was going to be in the middle. But anyway, I'll say this: I would agree with Brother James that it seems like that and it feels like that, right? I think that there are people, there are agents actively working to kind of roll the clock back, and I think we can't be at ease in Zion. We have to understand that there are people actively doing that, and we have to be actively engaged in fighting against that. And I shared this with someone that just called me on Monday, and he was talking about this. You know, he's a brother of the other persuasion, and he was asking. He said, you know, how do you have hope in times like this? Like, how do you make it? So I shared with him about my faith and everything, and I said, listen, you've got to understand that um, what people are fighting for is not just for right now.
Mhm.
And if you focus just on right now, then you've missed it. I'm fighting for, you know, what my daughter and her child, you know, will see, you know, years from now. And understanding that gives you the stamina that you need. Because if it's just about right now and all you see is what you're dealing with right now, then you miss that. It's the difference between the short game and the long game, and we just have to remember that and to be encouraged. And the other thing I told him is, you know, the fear from the other side is that we're going to do to them what's been done to us. But when I talk to people, that's not what they want. They just want to be able to love and care for their children and their family just like everybody else does. They just want to be safe. They want to be able to walk down the street and not have to worry about being profiled. I mean, the same things that you have. It's not that I want to take anything from you. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I just want what you have.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that person was quiet for a long time after I said that, because the fear is that we're going to do the thing. If we get whatever it is we're going to get, that we're going to be like that. And I've not seen that in our people at all. I've not seen it.
Mhm.
So
Just want to be treated fairly, equitably. Anyone else want to chime in on that one, or?
That was perfect.
Um, I, I'll, I'll say I really don't feel like we've lost traction. I I think when we realize and take the grand scheme of things, we are fighting to deprogram 400 years of programming. So, you know,
Mhm.
between the 60s and 2021, I think we've made some great leaps. And you know, I think Barack Obama this in a podcast. You know, we have to take things step by step. And these are small wins that we have to you know battle for. And so you know we may not have been able to go out and protest, you know, and we might have been met with dogs and fire hoses in the past, but you know over 80 years. You know, I feel like there's been growth in you know seeing more people um, you know, join us in this battle. So I think in the grand scheme of things, I think you know, the fact that I might not live to see the day where we necessarily win or we are equal, but you know, like Mr. Hill said, you know, we're fighting for the next generation. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I definitely don't think I'm built for what the people in the past have dealt with in the '60s.
Mhm.
but I'm built for today. So I think that's that's the most important thing.
Mhm. It's a good point. Yeah. Our people before us came through a lot to get us where we are today. So, and now hopefully our children will be able to look back and say the same thing about us and say that, they made the sacrifice so that we can be where we are today. So, mm. Okay, there's another question here. We older men have experienced the options that a young man may be considering today. How or what ways can we share these experiences? You think about it. How can you help someone not make the same mistakes, or maybe avoid some of the pitfalls? Because we've all seen it before.
Let's hear from the younger men, see what they're looking for from the older men.
I I think I touched on this possibly in the last quarter. You know, reaching out. I think I have ran into a few people have who weren't necessarily the most welcoming when I reached out to them and asked for
Mhm.
conversation. Um, but I've also run into just as many people who are willing to have that conversation. You know, and beyond that, even if it's not one on one, there are platforms and um, you know, the people I look up to whenever they get on a podcast or get on Facebook Live or Instagram Live and share a story, not just about their successes, but
Mhm.
their failures, and I think those are the most important conversations and lessons that I've listened to. The struggles that Ryan Coogler or Jordan Peele went through, and that how
Mhm.
many years it took between graduating college and them getting their first deal. Like that's the stuff that I want to listen to. It's not immediate, and what is that trajectory look like? So I think
Mhm.
those social media and podcasts and YouTube are all platforms that I think I would love to see some of the older heads and then the more experienced guys in the fields that we strive to be in. We love to hear those stories.
Yeah, the more authentic, the better, right? Yeah.
It's a great point, Julian. I think about just sometimes when you are approaching things in life, you think that it's your struggle alone, right? That no one else has like gone through it,
Mhm.
right? But there's people who actually have gone through these specific things, and you may not have the language to say, or even the relationships to approach anybody about these things that you're dealing with. But then when you're able to see something or hear to listen to something in a podcast or see something on social media, it gives you the language to say, okay, like I can go have this conversation with somebody and hear somebody I can connect with about this. And so that's huge, and I think that can be a big help to see more folks do more of that, particularly if you don't have the relationships or they don't have the relationships with you personally, right? And I would just say to the points that were kind of made earlier, in the conversation about just like not only like being present, but just actually like engaging, right, and people seeing you, it just having folks actually just speak to you, right? I think sometimes you kind of go about your day, you can just pass people and not say hello. I try to do my part, even now that we kind of
Mhm.
got masked off a little bit now, is to just give people a nice little like nod, smile, hello, how are you doing? I think that can even go a long way to even just establishing some kind of like relationship. It can be random or just someone just personally. And so I think that has helped me and can go a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
think.
both of these brothers have put their fingers on it. The other thing I would just add is that we have to always remember that to have an attitude, a growth attitude, right? So that no
Mhm.
matter how old you are, no matter what your age is, to always be looking to someone who I with insight or context for growth. And I think that's the thing that once you put yourself in that position, then you can see not only that you can receive and give, but you also have a responsibility to give the other way as
Mhm.
well. So it's
Mhm.
if you position yourself to be such that you're trying to learn and trying to grow, then you are able to then pass that on as well. So.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's unfortunate though that sometimes we feel we have to put the best look forward, that we have to talk about, the rosy parts of it and not really the hard and tough and the struggle involved. And I think Julian hit it right on, and that is, like to hear just how it really happened, and you'll find yourself learning that it wasn't that easy and that you're not alone. So. mm,
Mm.
we have to be, and it's not easy to share that with even a young person or someone you don't know, but sometimes we need to be open and honest. Yeah. All right, I think, let's see if I have any more questions. I think that's all I have for right now, Paige.
Yeah. So I think something else let's touch on is our mental and health. So we always ask this question to women because it's more prevalent, but what do you as a man to self-care, manage stress, and keep it all balanced? What do you guys do? Or do you even practice self-care?
I think initially the first thing you want to do is just bottle it all up. Like, I don't want to talk about this with nobody. Like, you know what I mean? I'll deal with it myself. But then it's like,
Mhm.
the wife or the girlfriend or whoever, is in your personal in your life. It's like they notice something's wrong with you, and maybe you might not be well, and so have a tendency to pull that out of you. And I think so for me, I may even touched on this last time, and I think even Julian, you might have mentioned it, was just around like dealing with like even anxiety like during this time, and
Mhm.
how hard it can be to share and express that you may be going through, whether it be anxiety or other mental health related issues. And I think we sometimes get so focused on like I can deal with it myself, but in reality, or I'll just pray about it, right, and it'll all go away. But sometimes you need some extra support and conversations to have with someone to kind of get out of your own way and out of your own head. And so for me, when I think about just like self care, I've really worked to do my part to try to get myself back to practicing good self care, right? I think prior to the pandemic, I was really good about just like taking time for me, right? Because there was a separation between like work and home. But then when work was at home, it was like hard to kind of just stop sometimes and really do me, right? So I had to focus on what, because I'm not going to the office, I can't take walks downtown anymore or eat my lunch outside. I got to do that at home, or I'll take the dog for a walk, right? I'm a big car guy, and so I like going to look at cars. And so Sunday afternoons, like when car dealerships are closed, I'll just go look around, right, and do those things. And or now that we have the kids, I'll dream about a really nice car that I can't have yet, but one day I'm going to have it, right? And so it's just doing those things to kind of keep hopeful and something to look forward to. I have the kids now, just balancing the things that they enjoy, whether it be just like, the Nintendo or just playing outside in the swing set, like doing those things. I'm a big,
Yeah.
focus. Like to do work outside, and so that's my thing as well. And so for me, it's just making sure that I build time into taking care of myself, because it can be so easy to neglect that for you, and then when you neglect so long, that it becomes a bigger issue. And I think the last thing I'll share, for me personally, has been working to build like I have pretty strong relationships with some guys that I ran track with at Ohio State, and we are
Mhm.
great friends today. And there's a few guys I can really share like anything with, right? So when I feel like when I'm kind of like in my head or experiencing a lot of anxiety, I can really go talk to them. If I feel like I can't, or if I I've already talked to wife, or need to have a conversation with somebody else, a guy, people may go through like some similar things. I found, that my relationships with them have helped me to be able just to kind of have and express those conversations and think things that I'm going through. And so for me, that's also been a part of my own self-care, just having that network of people I can actually go to talk to, and they can just listen. They don't always have to offer up solutions, but just to hear me and just know that, hey, Elon's dealing with this, and I'm gonna pray for you. You reach out to me whenever you need to, just to have that level of just connection with folks that can be helpful to your own mental health and well-being.
Nice. Nice. So
Yeah.
important. Julian, Ed?
Um, yeah, I think for me, it got to a point where I was realizing, every now and then you get the notification on your phone, the amount of screen time that you've had. And a goal of mine was to reduce that as much as possible. I think when COVID first hit, my screen time was, and I attribute that to a lot of the anxiety that I do. And so I think finding activities that reduce the amount of time that I'm spending on the phone and digesting, everything that's going on, and not listening to my own thoughts and sharing moments with people I love, was huge for me. So, self care I think looks different for everybody, and for me, finding a workout routine that forces me to be away from my phone, cooking. I think the last few months, my family can attest that I've become a chef of my own. um, I've cooked a lot lately, and I think it's huge. I would turn on a podcast, just cook, and that's at least an hour out of your day where I'm not looking at my phone. I'm listening. Maybe I'm listening to a sermon or whatnot, and I think that's huge. And even as much as people might not agree, I think gaming to a certain extent is self care for guys. I definitely have to get away from my phone, and with the latest era of new games, I can talk with my three best friends, and we can be playing the same game at the same time, and having a conversation that has nothing to do with what we're the game that we're having. So I found myself doing that maybe 4 or 5 times out of the week to end my day, have a conversation with my playing Call of Duty or whatnot. But that's a routine that I add to my list. So I think our self care is a little bit different from women's, but I do think I've in the past I haven't labeled that as self care, but when COVID first hit, I think I found the value in doing those simple things that take me away from the anxieties that I deal with.
Nice. Yeah. I think-
Yeah, Julian, we're gonna have to connect on the Call of Duty then. I didn't know you were down with that. So, you know, I'm pretty beastie. We're gonna have to hook up. I would say, yeah, I would say, like Julian said, I mean, I think it differs for men. I think the major piece of that, though, and you've heard the other two say that, is relationship. I have a really, great relationship with a lot of different guys, and I want to speak to the relationship I have with two guys in particular. And this is not to slight anybody else, but I play in a band. I'm in a group, a smooth jazz group, Copacetic, and the other members of the group, David Jordan and Derek Brown, we have really gotten close during this pandemic. It's weird because we're all in three different places. In fact, Dave's down in Atlanta. Derek is in Columbus, but like he's not here in the house with me, and we were all quarantined at different times and apart. But we've been able to get closer. We've shared some really powerful times together. Both of them lost their mother. I mean, during this period, so there's some closeness that happens as a result of the things that you share, right? So it's been really powerful for me to be able to have these guys in my life. Yeah, we talk about music and we joke around and have fun with each other, but we've also been able to share some really deep things, and especially related to our faith walk. And I think that that's important to have, to have somebody, to have people in your life like that. The other piece of that is just being physical. There's some, I had a health scare during this time, and my doctor was like, "Look, it's time we got to get some things together." And so, being able to have the support of my wife, and whether it be, preparing different meals or hey, let's take a bike ride, let's do this, let's do that, has been extremely helpful. And so I've been doing that. And then individually, I really have just been retreating with the Lord, to be honest with you. just taking time to step away from the computer, all the side projects, all the different things, and just, hey, God, it's me. I'm dealing with this or I'm going through that. That's been really, it's been really helpful because I've been in the past just go, 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 go.
Mhm.
And then when things really, really bad, I'm like, oh, yeah, hey, can you do this? But it's I'm taking those moments now. I'm taking those individual moments to take time to just, commune and connect with God. And that's been really helpful for self-care.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's the thing. For most men, you don't call it or even say, self-care, but that's really what it is. I mean, it is, your time to decompress, to bring it down, to share, get something off your chest, to, really do those things. And, you know, I don't think in our society we allow, I mean, women talk about it, but we don't hear men talk about it too much. So maybe it's going to play golf or, or some of the things that you do. So, yeah, sounds good. All right. I don't see any more questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, no, no more questions, Paige. Did you have anything else?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have any more questions. I was just going to emphasize the fact that it is hard to get men to get in touch with that side. So it's good that you guys are in that. It doesn't take like, I need a whole 5-star vacation to self-care. It can be going on a walk or choosing water over whatever else you're drinking. So yeah, I think it's great that you guys are doing that.
Very important. Yeah, I like that point. Yeah, sometimes it's just looking week to week, right? What are you doing from week to week? What are you doing? And then also, do you encourage other men in your circle, in your family, um, in your care group to do the same thing? Sometimes that's important as well because you can also see someone else. I know I have seen other people who, and people have seen it of me. Carla, are you really self-caring? Are you taking the time? How often do you get a chance to do that with other people?
Yeah.
If I could, I wanted to just, share this along with that. Like the three of us, we've been blessed. All college graduates, we're doing okay. But there are people that look like us, men that look like us that are going through some tough times, and they don't have what we have. They haven't had the opportunities necessarily that we've had. And so I think it's important for us to kind of, look at that and to really, address that. And I would just share this, in this brief time that we have is that you've got to find some way to plug in to some positive energy, some positive sources, right? Regardless of your station, regardless of where you are, everybody needs somebody, and we can't do this by ourselves. And so my encouragement would be to whoever you are, no matter where you are or what's going on, is to try to find a way to plug into some positive brothers who can pour into your life and support you, even just to listen to you. They may not have the answers, but just to be able to have somebody to listen to can save your life, can save your life. And so, we're fortunate, we're blessed. We have our church and our community. We can plug into care groups, Sunday school classes, different things like that. But there may be people out there that may not. My encouragement is if you're going through, there's some resources, there's some places out there. Mental health is a serious thing. And taking care of yourself in that way is really important. So, yeah, plug into, your doctor or healthcare professionals. Get the support and help that you need. It's nothing to play with, and it's important for you to plug in and to reach out to somebody.
Perfect. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, I I think that's, Carla, do you have any last questions or do you guys have any closing comments?
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking, yeah, maybe each person has something to say before we close out today.
I'll just say thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the fact that people ask us to come back. I mean, I was kind of blown away by that, and honored. And so, thank you, to our New Salem family and all those folks out there that thought we had something interesting to say, interesting enough to ask us back again. It's a pleasure and honor. Thank you so much.
I think, yeah, I just want to echo that and say thank you guys for bringing me back, bringing us back. And some, I guess a word of advice. I leave with people is, as much as we want to focus on our own mental health, I think if you're very intentional to reach out to another brother every, maybe once a while, I think that also goes a long way. And you start that chain of conversation and chain of I guess intention with checking up on people, and you never know what that will mean to somebody. I know what it means to me when someone calls me and go, "Hey, how you doing?" And it's not a question. You're not asking for something. I think that goes a long way. So just being intentional with that is important. I think that's a first step.
Mm-hmm.
And just lastly, again, thank you, you all, Paige and Carla, for pulling all this together, and our New Salem family for giving us this opportunity to speak, to our community again. This is again like an honor to be able to have this conversation with both Julian and Deacon Hill, and I just thank you all for this time. And really, I've been reflecting just about this last conversation and this one, and just thinking about my own faith walk and how this has helped, right, with that, right, to have this conversation and be able to come together. So I encourage folks to, when you have opportunities to do this, right, you don't need a Facebook Live to have a conversation about well-being, right? You can, like to Julia's
Mm-hmm.
point, call somebody up and just check in and see how you're doing. That truly goes a long way. So again, thank you for just allowing us to show people how to have just conversations.
Excellent. And
Definitely.
conversation among people, of different ages, of different backgrounds, different men. I mean, I think that's so important, and we really are glad you were able to join us again. Yeah, it was popular because we don't always have three men talking about just being, your experiences, and as Julia says, being authentic about it, and we really, really appreciate that. So thank you for being on the show.
Yeah,
Thank
of course. Thank you guys
Thank you.
again. Uh,
Yeah.
so thank you for everyone sticking around and watching. We'll be here again next week for another Wellness Wednesday talk. So we'd love for you to join us. Have a great night and stay safe.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.